It is the 4th of July, just a few seconds past 6 o'clock. Very good morning to you and welcome to Good Morning Namibia. My name is Ndishisha Mfungu.
And I'm Tonata Kavila. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's quickly go over what you can expect this hour. But before we do so, what's happening FIFA World Cup-wise?
World Cup, the round of 16 has concluded. The quarterfinals have been set. Of course, we're looking at the likes of, that is France and Uruguay, who are going to be playing, that is the quarterfinals. We saw some of the games yesterday as well. The last round, Sweden acing Switzerland there 1-0. England beating Colombia on penalties 4-3. It was a difficult encounter for them. Now the quarterfinals have been set. We have Uruguay versus France on Friday, and then we have Brazil versus Belgium on Friday as well. Saturday we'll have the likes of Sweden take on England, and then of course we'll also have Russia versus Croatia. The quarterfinals are set. I think the World Cup is starting to take shape, and of course this is the time where we know who's most likely to get to the finals and most likely to win the cup.
Wouldn't it just be weird if the host nation wins the cup this year?
This World Cup, everything is possible.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen some of the biggest teams get knocked out by what you would consider smaller teams.
Yeah.
But, so I'm open for everything, but I'm still vying for France. I'm still vying for France. But I'm just going to be open about this, yeah. All
right, France from the quarterfinals to the, from the quarterfinals to the final what?
Semi-finals.
Semi-finals. Let's quickly go over what you can expect this hour on Good Morning Namibia.
All right, Bernard Kavao, the Vice President of NANSO, as well as the Acting CEO of NSFAF, that's Kennedy Kandume, will be joining us with details on the outcome of the meeting they had regarding students' funding for 2018. This is, of course, a very contentious matter every year. Of course, this has to come up at least once or twice a year, and they will be here to tell us what came out of that meeting.
And I think that some great news emanated from there. But other than that, the Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority, NAMFISA, officially launched the NAMFISA whistleblowing hotline. Victoria Muranda, the Corporate Communications Manager of NAMFISA, will be here with more details.
That should make for an interesting one.
Yeah.
We'll also be talking to the niece of, that is the late Ottilie Abrams, that's Essie Shiming Chase. She will give us a brief bio of who the late Ottilie Abrams was. Of course, we know she was a stalwart within the realms of activism, and of course has done a lot, you know, with the likes of, you know, establishing the school, the Jacob Marengo School. And of course, she'll be here just to tell us a bit about the legacy of Ottilie Abrams.
Very inspiring. And then Sylvia Munjindi, project manager at Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, as well as James Itana, who's the project manager at Regain Trust, will be in studio with us, and they'll be sharing details about the launch of a gender-based violence and learners pregnancy project in Namibia.
Make for an interesting one. We look forward to that. But the 6 o'clock news in brief, weather, sports, as well as traffic updates are coming up with Tonata, so stay tuned for that.
They're headed this way.
This is not fair. This is not fair.
Yeah, well, that's the easy part.
He's Bigfoot.
No, Jill, no!
You can't go outside, and that's final.
You can take the Bigfoot out of the wild, but you can't take the wild out of the Bigfoot.
He's gonna be around here somewhere. I need you guys to help us catch him.
Now you know the big secret of Hidden Pines.
Resnick, Howard, why is the park ranger moving into this street?
In your news headlines this morning, President Hage Geingob has lauded the unity that prevailed during debates that's at the AU summit in Nouakchott, Mauritania. Among other decisions, the summit includes the candidature of Louis Mushikiwabo, who as Secretary General of the Organization of the La Francophonie. Let's quickly have a look.
Louis Mushikiwabo is Rwanda's Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and East African Community Affairs Minister. The African Union says its endorsement is in line with its objective to deploy Africans in key positions at international institutions. The endorsement is supported by France and solidified by President Emmanuel Macron's meeting with African leaders on the sidelines of the summit. The elections of the La Francophonie Secretary General will take place in October in Armenia. The summit also looked at progress made towards AU's institutional reforms, peace and security, and economic growth.
And commit to give her our full support. All this has been made possible thanks to the spirit of unity that prevailed in our deliberations and to the contributions of all delegations. At this summit, we have discussed issues of high importance for the smooth functioning of our union and its future. We have made progress on the way forward towards the completion of the institutional reform of our union. We have managed to reduce the 2019 budget through the application of the golden rules set up within the framework of the said reform.
Also at the summit, Namibia and 4 other countries signed the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
In other news, another outbreak of hepatitis E has been reported at Swakopmund. Erongo Governor Cleophas Mushavikwa, in a statement, confirmed that 4 hepatitis E cases have been reported. The cases were reported in the informal residential area of the Democratic Resettlement Community, DRC. However, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Amir Shaker, says there are 32 other cases whose results are still pending. Details of the cases were sent to South Africa, and the investigation would take about 2 weeks to be concluded. Dr. Shaker says measures to control the spread of the virus have started and that there are no serious cases or deaths recorded. And then an experiment using mice is offering hope for patients with HIV.
An experiment using these mice is offering hope for patients with HIV.
That means the mice has all the human immune cells in their body so that they can support the real AIDS virus infection in the body.
What scientists from the University of Hong Kong say they've discovered is what's being called a functional cure for the HIV virus. It's an antibody that acts against all forms of HIV, a major advance, as right now no vaccine exists to treat its many varieties. Though the antibody doesn't completely eliminate the virus from the body, it keeps levels low enough to be virtually undetectable. What's more, doses could be taken less often than current medications, which can require daily doses. This discovery comes at a crucial time. According to UN-supported AIDS Data Hub, 850,000 people in China are infected with HIV. But more testing and clinical trials lie ahead, which means another 3 to 5 years before it's available to consumers.
Let's divert to sports. Kenya's rugby union has been a house full of wranglers for the last few weeks. Cracks began emerging when Kenya Sevens layers stripped off a sponsor's logo at the Paris Sevens in June.
This act led to the sacking of Sevens head coach Innocent Simiyu immediately following the withdrawal of sponsors. The union came under fire from rugby fans in the country, with fans backing Simiyu, who had led Kenya to reach and surpass 100 points in the World Sevens circuit for the first time. Players then backed their coach with threats of not taking part in the Rugby World Cup that starts on July the 20th in San Francisco. However, meetings between all parties involved in recent days has seen some of the issues resolved and the Sevens team hit training camp.
There was a misunderstanding between the union and the coach. The coach should realize that he is an employee of the union, and as an employer, we have certain responsibilities. As you are my employee, you have certain obligations as well. So it's a give and take. It's regrettable that that happened because you know that Simiyu has been and will go down in history as one of the best coaches we've had. Even though people were skeptical about his performance, he has delivered the 100+ points, which not even Mike Friday was able to deliver.
Time now to have a look at your weather update. Your interior will be cold at first over the interior itself, and it will be partly cloudy and mild to warm over the northeastern half of the interior today. Elsewhere, expect sunny and mild to warm but cold to mild weather conditions in the southern parts of the country, and it will be windy over the interior tomorrow as well. Your coastal conditions, mostly sunny and warm to hot, and sandstorms are expected to prevail over the coast tomorrow. Let's quickly have a look at your wind conditions. Fresh to strong northeasterly, and your tides at Walvis Bay. Expect a low tide at 3 minutes to 7 o'clock this morning, a high tide at 10 minutes to 1 o'clock, and another high tide at 29 past 7 for those who do go fishing and angling. Let's quickly have a look at your sunset in Windhoek at 27 minutes to 8 o'clock this morning, and you can expect your your sunrise 27 to 8 and your sunset at 20 past 6 tonight. Let's quickly have a look at your minimum and maximum forecast. Let's quickly have a look at your traffic news this morning. Not just have a look, but we're lucky enough to be joined by Constable Romeo Simasiku this morning. Good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Let's quickly get started. Road conditions, of course, everyone's always looking forward to that. What are they like this morning?
All right. Thank you. At the moment, our roads shows that we do not have any traffic lights that are malfunctioning. We did not receive any accident, or so the roads are clear. It's only one road closure, which is the road of Fidel Castro from Vika to Mandume and Mfayo. That road has been closed off since last month, and it will run until probably mid-July. But this hour, more especially this time of the morning, it's still dark. Everyone is expected to to put on reflective cloth so that they can increase their visibility from far. A motorist should be able to identify or to notice that there is a person in front of me rather than putting dark cloth.
Yeah.
We have school kids that are walking to school. We urge guardians or parents to escort these kids to school, especially crossing the roads, because kids will not know what to do when they come in the face of danger. We have those kids who are being dropped by parents, who are being dropped off by parents at school. We urge those parents to drop them within the school premises to avoid dropping them in the streets, and then they meet their friends and play, and anything can happen to kids. But if I may move on to other matters.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we have a concern regarding the public members who have a tendency of taking law into their own hands. By this, I'm talking about people who believe that mob or justice is the way to prevent crime within their society. If you may take a look at the clip there, focus on the three gentlemen there who are trying to rob a young girl just right behind the minibus there. This happened in Evelyn Street at around 2100 hours. As these men continued robbing this young girl, across the street there were people observing this action, and they decided to come for her rescue, which is actually a good thing because they are offering help. But instead of just helping, they decided to panel beat the person, to beat up the person. Yeah, so which is totally wrong. You can see they're using sticks and knob carries to beat up the suspect. The question is, what if this person dies? What if this person suffers serious injuries? This means you'll also be going to jail because you have committed a crime. So what we urge public members is that when you apprehend a suspect, you do not have to beat up the person. Rather, call us so that we can come and do our job from there on. In order for you not to lead yourself into trouble. We are always reachable and always on duty. Our toll-free numbers are always the same, which is 061-302-302, or you send us an SMS to 4444.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in. Constable Romeo Simasiku, they're just giving us details as to how to go about helping each other within our societies and communities, saying do not take the law into your own hands. And as you've heard, the road conditions are prima. They're great for you to head on to work and so forth. Do stay tuned. Dishishi will be back with our first interview of the hour.
With the increase of vehicles, road closures and malfunctioning traffic lights, residents of the capital are finding themselves spending more time in traffic. Are these elements just a glimpse of what the future holds for road users? Michelle Kandukira spoke to members of the public and the city police on the surge of this frustration.
Be it the increase of vehicles on the road or poor town planning, Windhoek residents are finding themselves spending more time in traffic, especially during the morning and afternoon rush hour. We hit the streets to find out what the road users have to say.
Rush hour is the slowest time that you can find. I don't know why we call it rush hour. We should call it the slowest hour because that's how it affects me, because you don't get to the office in time, nor do you enjoy your lunch because it's the slowest time we have. That's how it affects me.
If you don't leave like 5 minutes before the time, then usually you get caught up in that rush traffic. So means that you come late, and that's why you always need to leave earlier than the actual time that you actually need to log off.
I kind of affected like where I have to go. Now I kind of have to be slowed down and have to wait and patiently, stand in long queues, and especially in your taxi, that it's really hard to get your destination on time.
In the city we have traffic lights. The traffic lights are synchronized, especially during peak hours. Those are in the morning and in the afternoon as well, just to ensure that there is a steady flow of vehicles going through the town or through the roads. And then also we have the law enforcement itself, where we just physically go on the ground and make sure, that we assist where we can.
Really, it doesn't affect me. So I understand it. It's modernization, so it's part of life. So we just have to plan our business properly according to time.
The traffic population in the city has grown over the last few years. And our roads have not expanded that much. That is the biggest problem. We are currently having, in the year 2016, we had 150,000 cars registered in Windhoek. And, that's a huge number. And the city is growing almost every day. And that should be the biggest contributing factor, that the availability of vehicles on the roads and everyone having access to vehicles nowadays makes it a bit difficult, for us to drive through the city as we used to.
It affects me in a sense that I don't get to the place I want to be quickly. I think that they should make more roads or something, like overlapping roads, like on top of each other or something. I think it's too high tech, but I think maybe you can get there in due time.
Our roads, especially Comastal, because I come from Katutura, the road is very narrow. I think we need like 2 lanes or something.
It's the layers. It's too much car, the road, they must expand.
It wastes my time because I need to go somewhere and traffics are always a lot in the way.
Drive through the city, learn your streets, just to ensure that you also know shortcuts, alternate routes, that you do not always just stick to the normal route. So if that road is having a blockage or there's an accident on the road, then you would then be able to go with alternate routes, and that would get you to your destination within the same time frame.
Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the issue of the Namibia Students Financial Assistance Fund, that's NSFAF, and students from different institutions of higher learning in Namibia has been an ongoing one. The students recently threatened a nationwide shutdown of the fund's offices if it does not pay their tuition fees. In order to mitigate the situation, NSFAF, the Student Representatives Councils, and NANSO held a joint meeting and reached an agreement regarding students' funding for 2018. Now, for more on the outcome, I'm joined by Benhard Kavau, who is the Vice President of NANSO, as well as the Acting Chief Executive Officer of, that is, the Namibia Students Financial Assistance Fund, Mr. Kennedy Kandume. A very good morning to you, gentlemen, and many thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure having you here in studio. Mr. Kandume, let's first start with the agreement. What does it entail? And of course, what is the way forward from here?
Yes. Before I start, I just want to extend our thanks to the student leadership for understanding our position and for agreement. Yeah. The agreement actually entails that NSFAF pay a once-off settlement of 3,000 to students for the 2017 outstanding non-tuition fee. And as we speak, payment has been processed, and it should reach. It has reached some student account, and the final payment should be done by Friday.
Okay.
So that's done, and the agreement also entails that for 2018 tuition fee, NSFAF will pay up to the maximum of 24,000 for tuition fee for that's a student at University of Namibia, NAST, and IUM. And further, we also recognize that there's those fields of study that require more than 24, like medicine and engineering, to which we are going to pay 54,000 for medicine and 34 for engineering and veterinary medicine. And then again, we also have put aside or made a provision of non-tuition fee for 2018 to a flat fee of 17,000.
A flat fee of 17,000?
Yes, toward non-tuition fee.
Okay. Mr. Kabao, are you happy, are you pleased with this agreement as Nanso?
Yes, on behalf of the student leaders, we could say this is the best amicable solution that we have reached, putting in mind that there was a continuous engagement between student leader, NANSO, and then our stakeholder, NSFAF. So we could say this was a good amicable deal for the best interest of students at this moment.
Mr. Kandume, it's a lot of expenditure for NSFAF. Are you in the position to cater to these agreements, to meet this agreement? You've mentioned that you're going to pay 54,000 for courses such as medicine, for instance. You're going to pay 24,000 for the more regular courses, so to say. You're going to pay a non-tuition fee of 17,000. Is NSFAF in a position to cater for all these financial needs, for all these agreements that you've agreed to?
Yeah, I think this is the best we can do, given the prevailing economic condition in the country. And as you are aware, we only receive 1.455 billion from government, and we did a lot of calculation for us to arrive at this amount. And we're really saying this is the best we can do given the allocation. If we go beyond that, then we might overspend, and you see, as you know, the issue of overspending and going beyond our budget is, I think, nobody can tolerate that. So this is the best we can do.
Yeah. NSFAF currently caters for 42,000 students, if I'm not mistaken.
42, yes.
Is 1.4 billion not sufficient for this?
The 1.4 billion is only sufficient if we pay the amount that I mentioned earlier. If we go beyond that, then 1.4 is not enough.
Sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Mr. Kabao, just going forward, do you see the issue of non-payment being put to bed?
Excuse me?
Do you see the issue of non-payment of tuition fees being put to bed with this agreement?
Ben, like, to be stopped?
Yes. Do you foresee that this issue will finally be put to bed, as in it will no longer be an issue between your organization, for instance, the Student Representative Council and NSFAF, the payment of tuition?
Yes. At the moment, we feel we find the best amicable solution. If we look at 2017, a student received only 7,000. So we've fought for them. There will be an additional 3,000. So in total, they are getting 10,000. So, but this year, 2018, we have even made it much better to 17,000, which we feel is better than last year, and most of the students are supporting us in terms of the non-tuition fee. That's okay. By the way, it's a loan. So if they take more, then they will pay more again. So for now, our students are happy.
Is this agreement only for this financial and this academic year?
Yes, we will see what will be the allocation for next year, next financial year. And really, like I mentioned before, that if NSFAF should not incur deficit, we should allocate fund to students within available fund.
Yeah. Now, an appeal committee has equally been set up to look at rejected applications. As the receiver of these applications, let's talk about this committee, and of course, what are some of the factors that lead to a candidate's application being rejected?
I think it's important that the member of public understand and student themselves and the applicant understand the NSFAF requirement. There's a certain requirement for local institutions as well as for international students. To start with, for somebody to qualify for funding at local institution, they should at least obtain 25 points in grade 12 in 5 subjects. That's the requirement number 1. And then we have another requirement, like students need to submit proof of parental income, proof of orphanage, proof of disability in the case of a disabled person, and those form part of the requirement. When the assessment is done, we look at has this person obtained NSFAF point in grade 12, They submitted all the required documentation, and therefore the application is then been approved or moved to the next stage. It's so happened that student or applicant then omit some documentation, and as a result, the application end up being rejected. And that's the appeal, what the appeal committee is looking into.
Mr. Gabao, if I'm not mistaken, Nanso was the one who pushed for this appeal committee. Are you pleased, and does it come on time, looking at we're halfway through the academic year?
Yes, Nanso is pleased because we also included the student leader in this appeal committee. And the first appeal committee meeting, it will be today, where we are going to set a benchmark and look at all the matters that need to be resolved. Already, NANSO have collected different names of students who were rejected, and students have given the reasons on why they were rejected. So on those bases, we will confirm with NSFAF, who will look into the system. So we feel the appeal committee will do very well and will give best solutions.
Just, I'm not sure if you guys have the numbers for us, but roughly how many rejected applications are we looking at here?
According to the report that was given, 6,000 students were rejected. We are expecting the number to increase perhaps because now there were some students that gave us another list. Apparently they were rejected on different bases. So we are hoping if they have all the required document and they qualified, so we should find a way for them. The importance of this appeal committee is because it's where we compromised the non-tuition fee for last year. Remember, our demand was non-tuition fee for 2017 should be 100%. But later we came to consensus where we said, why should we pay non-tuition fee for last year 100%, but rather give a 3,000? And also putting in mind that some of the students for 2017, some they have graduated, they are working now. So as a responsible student organization, we felt there's no need to give them 100%, but rather that money should be moved to the appeal so that most students, the new intake, can have access to education.
Indeed. Mr. Kandume, I know that these are loans.
Yes.
Meaning that they have to be paid back eventually. I know that your organization has been struggling to recover some of these funds, particularly with the repayment of loans. Just in terms of that, what have you put in place? How are you going to recover some of these monies? And of course, we know it's millions that we're speaking of here.
In terms of recovery, we are putting mechanism in place to say, to start with, we will review our contract. To make it enforceable and for NSFAF, then to enable NSFAF to recover. So because previously there was an issue of contract, how it was designed as to whether it was a grant or whether it is a loan. Those issues are reviewed now. Our contract is clear. It is indicated. It's indicating what is being given as a loan. We have a record which is saying on this, in 2017, for example, 2018, we paid this amount, this much for student A, and we expect student A to repay come the time of repayment.
Mr. Gabao, do students necessarily understand, their responsibility as loan holders once they've graduated, that they need to pay this money back? Because I've seen a couple of posts on social media, for instance, whether it's jokes about paying back NSFAF, but there seems to be, to a high regard, a certain level of ignorance with regards to paying back these loan monies. Do students understand what is required of them? And once they sign that contract, do they understand what is required of them in terms of paying back that loan?
Yes, we can say 100% students understand what they have signed for. Remember, the tuition fee, it's a grant, and then the non-tuition fee, it's a loan. But what makes students to relax as well is because the commitment is not being met as it has been signed in the contract. So students expect early payment, but then you get the payment sometime at the end of the year. So this factor does not motivate students to do as they're supposed to. And also, we are trying to move, it's a motion that we are debating, Resolution 16 for NANSO, where we are fighting that all loans must be turned into grants. Until then, when we pass that resolution, then we can tell students that for now, do not pay back the loans. But for now, they've signed contract that they are going to pay back the loans, and we did not amend that contract. they understand very well, but it's just the commitment. Once it's fixed, our students, as long as they are employed, you see, some of the factor that makes students not to pay is the unemployment rate. How do I pay if I'm not employed and so on? But if all these are considered, I think the student will be able to commit to the agreement of their contracts.
Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me this morning, and I hope that you have indeed found a lasting solution to the payment of tuition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was Bernard Kavao, who is the Vice President of NANSO. And of course, that is Kennedy Kandume, the Acting Chief Executive Officer of NSFAF, speaking to us this morning about an agreement between the two organizations as well as the Student Representative Councils of the University of Namibia, the Namibia University of Science and Technology, and the International University of Management, where they have agreed to pay, that is a 3,000 amount of non-tuition payments. They've also agreed to pay, that is a 24,000 tuition fee for the year 2018, and that extends to 54,000 for courses such as medicine and veterinary sciences, and of course also a non-tuition payment of 17,000. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, educator, social activist, and community leader Otili Abrahams, through her tireless efforts, left an indelible mark on the education system in Namibia. And here to give us more details about her is her niece, Essie Sheming Chase. Essie, good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Ms. Otili Abrahams. For many Namibians, of course, great educator, activist, and so forth. We've been hearing so much about her for the past few days. But as a family member, what mark has she left on, or what impression has she made on the family?
Well, Auntie Tilly pretty much practiced what she preached. Mm-hmm. She came from a line of extraordinarily strong women. And so in our lives, she was also pretty much a matriarch, a very strong woman. Auntie Tilly practiced what she preached. You know, at her house, one thing that was not allowed was racism. Was not allowed to make racist jokes. We were not allowed to be tribalist. Auntie Tilly was not a racist, she was not a tribalist, she was a Namibianist. Yeah. And people from all walks of life, and all shades, and all colors, and all cultures were at the house on a regular basis. Auntie Tilly also very much believed in decolonizing the mind. What I mean by that is you have the age-old culture that says that children must be seen and not heard. No, Auntie Tilly didn't believe that. Auntie Tilly believed that children must be seen, educated, and nurtured. Her own children were reading by the age of 3. So for her, she believed that in any economic environment, and especially after the history that we had, educating the Namibian child, especially the girl child, was the most important element of economic development and development in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the history of starting off in South Africa and then coming here to set up, a school at a time where women of her color or would hardly even make it as teachers back then. What are some of the contributions that sort of impacted her leadership and what it meant to the education sector here in Namibia that you've picked up, of course?
I think one must remember that Auntie Tilly, as well as my mom, the children of Otto Sheming, they grew up in old location. My grandfather was very much ahead of his time when he made sure that his daughters went to study further after matric. That was not something that was normal. So they were very much steeped in the struggle from the time that they were very young. Even though my grandfather became a businessman and managed to raise his children all equally, he was the one that sent his children to study. So when Auntie Tilly went to South Africa and she started the Yuchi-Chan movement and also was a founding member of what is today known as the SWAPO Party of Namibia, she was a militant. She didn't have time to waste. You know, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to stand today next to a white person and say what I want to say and have a proper conversation or just feel what I want to feel, where in the old days we were prevented from doing that. So Auntie Tilly and a lot of people, a lot of her peers paved the way for us to be able to be treated equally. Not for us to get something that we didn't work for. Auntie Tilly didn't believe in that at all. If you haven't worked for it, if you haven't studied it, you're not going to get it.
And you don't
excellence,
deserve it.
yeah, excellence was something that was very much important in her entire family. And when it came to education, she was the first woman, I think, that went to Beijing when we first had the women's conference in Beijing way back when. And then when she came back, Auntie Tilly started the girl-child movement because it was important to educate the girl child. But what she did later in life was that she started also becoming involved in teaching young boys to become gender sensitive at an early age. We complain about men today, but at home we still make the girl wash the dishes and the man sit. Titili didn't allow that in the house, you know. Everyone was treated equal.
It's a beautiful portrait you're painting of her beliefs and her morals and values. With all of that in mind, aside from her contributions to activism, to education, what was she like?
Auntie Tilly was a she was a very intellectual woman, and had an amazing sense of humor. I remember as a child, I think it was in 1978, 79, when I moved to Sweden, when we went to visit them in Sweden, because Auntie Tilly and Uncle Kenny escaped to Sweden and Mommy escaped to Germany. And I developed this taste for tomato sauce. I wanted to eat ketchup with everything. So when we went to visit Auntie Tilly, I wanted to have ketchup with my vanilla ice cream. My mom, being a strict disciplinarian, was like, no. Auntie Tilly's, no, let her taste the ice cream with the ketchup. Let her taste buds decide what they want to do. Either she likes it or she doesn't. So she was the type of person that would, you know, give you the information that you needed in order to make a decision. If you walked into a house, don't ask her, can I have milk? Can I have coffee? Open the fridge and take out what you want. Every single Sunday, Auntie Tilly's, whether she was in the struggle, whether she was teaching, Sunday was her family day. So from early in the morning, she would get up, she would cook for all of us. She would cook for the entire week. She had to cook for the entire week. And so in that sense, she, you know, she was the sort of aunt that you could go and speak to about anything, but always done on an intellectual level. Auntie Tilly was very much, she was a brainiac.
That's good to know.
She was very much ahead of her time, even in the way, you know, she was as an aunt as well. And we could all go to her house when our parents told us that we were in trouble, and she would comfort us with food.
Yeah,
it was very lovely.
Everyone needs an aunt like that.
Yeah.
But the part that really inspires me is the fact that she was ahead of her time, as you've said, and also involved in not just education but politics. How do you believe she managed to sort of make both of these different sort of, you know, entities functional? And I mean, politics, of course, would influence the access to education that other kids would have, but how did she make it work?
To be honest, she just did. I can't explain how she did. You know, you come from a family of get up and excel. Auntie Tilly got up and she didn't think. I remember once, and I had this conversation with her and with my mom, where I said to her, you know, I'm depressed. I'm feeling depressed. And Auntie Tilly would say, you know, during the struggle, I didn't have time to be depressed. I was just running for my life. This is new world issues. I don't know what it means. So you come from a family of necessity is the mother of invention.
Okay.
So you just do it. So she would get up and she would just do.
I like her.
Yeah.
I like her. It's a pity I never got to meet her. But one final thing, unfortunately we are out of time. The education system in Namibia currently is still struggling really to you know, fully educate the younger ones. What was her dream for this sector? Has she mentioned anything?
You know what's very funny? Up until the last 2-3 days before her death, all Auntie Tilly could think about was getting up in the morning and going to school. More than her children, more than her family, all she wanted and her last thoughts were about the school. The education issues in this country are all over the place. I wouldn't even want to start having that conversation. But Auntie Tilly believed in educating the child. Remember, Article 20 of our Constitution guarantees us the right, at least, to primary education. And she wanted, for her, that was her biggest dream in life, was that every single Namibian child would be educated. And not just go to school and be educated by someone who can't teach, but to have proper teachers who teach children properly. I mean, even I went to Jacob Marengo. She taught me history, you know, when I was 15, 16 years old. So for her, decolonize the mind and develop the Namibian nation by educating the Namibian child. And that was her legacy in life, and those were her last thoughts also.
All right, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Right, quite an inspiring woman. She was here to talk about her aunt, Essie Shimming Chase. She's the niece of Ottilie Abrahams, who's passed on. And as you know, she founded the Jacob Marengo Tutorial College in Katutura and done so much more: politics, activism, and educating. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with more right here on Good Morning Namibia.
Welcome back. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority, that's NAMFISA, officially launched the NAMFISA Whistleblowing Hotline. The purpose of the hotline is to reinforce the NAMFISA Code of Ethics and, of course, to provide assurance to all employees, contractors, and other stakeholders related to NAMFISA that they will be protected from any penal action. Now, with more details on this, I'm joined on the line by Ladies of Victoria Muranda, who is the Corporate Communications Manager of NAMFISA. A very good morning to you, Victoria. Many thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning, Victoria.
Yes, good morning.
How do you do today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Right. Before we get into the details of the whistleblowing hotline, please let's just start off by looking at, you know, the Code of Ethics for the Namibia Financial Institutions, that is a supervisory authority. What does it say, and of course, what prompted this whistleblowers hotline?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The Code of Ethics sets out the principles and provides guidance on ethical behavior and action that is expected of NAMFISA's employees. It embodies a set of principles that would assist us as the authority to achieve our mission of effectively regulating and supervising financial institutions and to give sound advice to the Minister of Finance. And additionally, to work towards a better society within and outside NAMFISA. Now, this code of ethics represents a personal pledge of every NAMFISA staff and board member that each activity within the authority shall be underpinned by the values and principles that are set out in the Code of Ethics.
Prior to this, what were some of the reporting channels of NAMFISA? Ms. Miranda? Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, prior to the setting up of this whistleblower hotline, what were some of the reporting channels of NAMFISA?
Some of the reporting channels is that we have a dedicated customer service line where people could call for complaints, and then they could complain about the different activities or conduct that were practiced by the NAMFISA employees or board members.
Now, the whistleblowing hotline encourages stakeholders to report any activity or conduct in which instances of fraud, corruption, malpractices, and abuse of NAMFISA resources are suspected. But how will the regulator ensure that, whistleblowers are protected in the process?
What the authority has done is to develop a policy first that was approved by the board. Now, this policy informed the protection of whistleblowers. The policy then dictates that the whistleblower will be entitled to protection against detrimental action and the safeguard of the confidential information. Further, what is worth mentioning is that the line is operated by an independent third party who reports directly to the board through the internal audit function. It is also good to know that the policy is aligned to the National Namibian Whistleblowing Protection Act, which is the Act of 2017.
But what details, are required here from the whistleblowers? And what if, such a whistleblowing instance reaches, criminal activity or criminal procedure?
What we expected from the whistleblower is that the whistleblower should report instances of fraud, instances of corruption, malpractice, the way the NAMFISA employee conduct themselves in terms of abuse of resources. If there are any suspicion with that regard, then they are more than welcome then to call that whistleblowing hotline and report it accordingly so that it's brought to the attention of the board and the board takes the corrective measures and decisions.
Victoria, just quickly give us those hotline details, please.
Okay. The toll-free number is 081-91-847. That is the number that you call from a cell phone. I'll just repeat it again, 081-91-847. There's also the hotline. The hotline basically is the telephone line that you can use to call, which is 0800-222-333. The hotline using telephone is 0800-222-333. Then we have a unique email address, which is namfisa@tip-off.com. And then the generic fax line, we also make provision for that, is 0800-007788. And for more information, you can always go to the www.tip-off.com.na. I must mention that when you call the toll-free cell phone number, for example, the 08191-847, when you are attended to on the whistleblowing hotline that is 24 hours and 7 days a week, you can report any instance in any vernacular language, any local language, and not only necessarily in English.
Fantastic. Victoria, many thanks for joining us this morning and wish you all the best with this whistleblowing hotline. That is the Corporate Communications Manager of NAMFISA, Victoria Muranda, speaking to us this morning about NAMFISA's whistleblowing hotline. Of course, they look to reinforce the NAMFISA Code of Ethics and provide assurance to all employees, contractors, and other stakeholders, of course, related to NAMFISA, that they will be protected from any penal action. Do stay with us. Tonata returns with our last interview for the first half.
And thank you, Ndishishi. Moving right along, Regain Trust in partnership with the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, they are launching a gender-based violence and learners' pregnancy project in Namibia. They're calling it Survivors Speak Up, Innovative Approaches to Addressing Gender-Based Violence in Namibia. And joining us for further details, Sylvia Munjindi. She is the project manager over at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, as well as James Itana, who's the project manager at Regain Trust. Ladies, gentlemen, good morning and welcome.
Morning.
Morning. Always fantastic to have such project because it speaks to our times. Perhaps, Sylvia, we can start off with you. Why is the focus of the project of these two issues, gender-based violence and learners' pregnancy, such an important topic?
Well, it is an important topic because, as you know, that the cases of GBV and learners' pregnancy are increasing on a daily basis as we speak. When you read the media, you will always hear that somebody has been killed or
found themselves in some form of altercation, but it's all to do with gender-based violence and young teenagers, especially in rural areas, eh?
Yes.
The pregnancy rate.
Yeah, and because of that, we have really there is a great concern to address gender-based violence and also teenage pregnancy amongst our society. And therefore, we have actually launched this project to address these problems that we are experiencing.
Fantastic. James, according to the latest National Demographic Health Survey, 32% of all women aged between 15 and 49 surveyed had experienced some form of physical violence since the age of 15. Speak to us about the Regain Trust and Friedrich Ebert Stiftung's mandate and role in addressing these issues.
Sure. I think, when we're looking at the issue of gender-based violence and learner pregnancies, we're beginning to realize that these are amongst the key issues in this country that are really giving us an indication that, as a country, we're not quite close to achieving gender equality. And it is two issues that are, adversely affecting the lives of women and girls in this country. That means that nearly half of our population in this country are not living their lives in freedom. They are not being free, yet we're claiming to be an independent Namibian. So I think, the Regain Trust has always had a mandate of, providing psychosocial support services for survivors of gender-based violence, with understanding that, it's as it is already very difficult for someone to come out and speak up about, having faced abuse, either be it in their household or from strangers, and then for them to go and, try and navigate the system of seeking help and, being thrown from, the one service provider to the next service provider without there necessarily being some, a support structure, someone who can hold this person's hand and help them navigate the system. And I think, this is where Regain Trust comes in, where we are there to provide the support for our survivors out there and help them understand that there is someone out there who believes in them. There is someone out there who is willing to go that extra mile with them. There is someone who believes in the story that they're telling us. And there is someone who is willing to help them deal with the trauma that they had just experienced and help them get to a process where they can heal and actually move from being victims, to sort of being survivors. And then on this side we have, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. And they've had, I think they're one of the longest serving civil society organizations in this country who have, done a phenomenal job in terms of working with political decision makers, political movements to try and promote democracy in the country, to strengthen the capacity in terms of, democracy. And I think these two organizations are bringing sort of their expertise at hand to look at, how do we effectively address issues related to gender-based violence and learner pregnancies in Namibia by ensuring that the focus, at the center and at the heart of this project, we're really placing the survivors there. And then we would like to amplify their voices as well, hence the title, Survivors Speak Up.
Absolutely. Sylvia, he's mentioned a lot of key points here, factors, but I'd like to get back to the project. Survivors Speak Up. As James has said, it's difficult for survivors or victims of gender-based violence or learner pregnancy to be believed, and it dates back to our traditions and cultural beliefs and so forth. So from the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung side, why did you decide to get involved in this project, and what's the ultimate end game for you guys?
We decided to actually get into this project because as institutions that believe in social justice and democracy, we feel that it is our role to actually do justice to victims and survivors, so that we are able to give them the courage and hope to get out of abusive relationships, and also at the end of the day get them the help that they need through our partners, Regain Trust, and so that at the end of the day they can be in charge of their own destiny and also be independent and contribute to our national developmental goals.
Absolutely. James, Regain Trust has done so much work. We've heard so many different stories from survivors on different media platforms. So talk to us about the program. Walk us through it. Survivors Speak Up, innovative approaches to address gender-based violence. How much more innovative can one get when it comes to gender-based violence? Because it's a human rights issue. Women are also human beings. Men are also human beings. So how much more innovative do we need to get?
You know, I think, yes, we acknowledge that as a country, you know, a lot has been done, and a lot is still being done to try and address, you know, the issues of gender-based violence and under pregnancy in the country. And I think, you know, Namibia is sort of held as one of the countries that has the most progressive, you know, legal and policy frameworks.
We've received an award,
you know,
yes.
right? Gender-based violence, we've received this GMAC award. But in as much as we, you know, there's a lot that's happening, there's still massive gaps out there. And here we're looking at, you know, what does access to services look like for survivors out there? Do we have 24-hour services that run throughout, you know, the 7 days that are accessible for survivors?
James, unfortunately, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut it short there because we have to cross over to news. But just briefly, when, where, and what time?
Well, tomorrow at the Franco-Namibia Cultural Center. We'll be starting us from 2 o'clock. And we would like to invite all stakeholders who feel that they have a role to play in addressing gender-based violence to come and attend this launch and this public dialogue.
Right, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. Time is always a factor. Thanks. We're speaking to James Itana. He's the project manager at Regain Trust, as well as Sylvia Munjindi. She's the project manager over at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and they'll be having their the launch tomorrow, or rather the program tomorrow at the FNCC, 2 o'clock, and you are invited if you'd like to find out more. Stay tuned. We've got news coming up next with Leonard.
My name is Leonard Vidby, and good morning and welcome to the 7 a.m. News Bulletin on NBC. H1N1, or swine flu, claimed one more life, bringing the death toll to 2 since it was first reported last month. Health Ministry's epidemiologist Dr. Lillian Kahwika told NBC News that 10 cases have been recorded so far. It is alleged that 3 cases of the swine flu were reported at Orban Primary School in Windhoek. However, the Ministry of Health said they have not received any official confirmation from the school, although there is a letter circulating on social media which was addressed to parents and guardians. NBC could not get comment from the school as the phone went unanswered. Yesaya Gabriel Shiyunda, who is accused of murdering 5 of his family members, appeared in Rundu's Magistrate Court. We would like to warn that this insert might contain sensitive images to some of the viewers. We apologize. We will bring you the visuals at another time. Team Nudo's slate, under the leadership of Esther Ushua Mwenjingwa, is seeking a High Court interdict to order the previous leadership under Asser Mbai not to declare the elections on the 26th of May this year null and void. The group also wants the High Court to restrict Mbai and his team not to conduct themselves as office bearers in terms of the party's constitution. Any person intending to oppose the interdict has until the 11th of next month to do so.
Employees are demanding a salary increment of 10%, while the company only offered 6%. The workers also demonstrated in protest over alleged unfair labor practices, misappropriation of funds, inconsistency in job gradings and salaries, as well as the lack of leadership.
There is no industrial peace and harmony within the institution. There is no compliance with internal corporate policies such as recruitment, selection, procurement, affirmative action, and many more. Unjust, self-centered verdicts are made without consideration of staff interests, as well as breaching of the recognition agreement between NTB and NAPU.
Meanwhile, no manager received the petition. Workers vowed to continue with demonstrations every day until someone from management received their petition.
We demand to receive a satisfactory reply to our petition within the next 5 days, or on or before the 11th of July 2018. Failure to do so will cause us to conduct further demonstrations, as well as filing a dispute case with the Labour Commissioner.
In a telephonic interview, NTB CEO Digu Naubeb calls on the union to return to various platforms created by both parties to solve the grievances of the employees. Selima Henok, NBC News, Windhoek.
That was the insert on the NTB and the refusal to accept a petition by workers who staged a demonstration on Tuesday. On to Rubicon Security Services guards at Tsumeb have petitioned the Ministry of Labour to take action against their employer over alleged poor wages. They want the Labour Commissioner to force the company to implement the minimum wages for security guards.
There are over 200 security guards employed by Rubicon at the town. Employees add their unhappiness over the $7 per hour wage paid by employer. This is despite the government gazette citing wages of security guards to be $10 per hour. These guards also want the company to adhere to the country's labor laws to relieve employees at the age of 60 of their duties.
We would like the company to respond to this because we are very much tight to be paid lower income while others are getting better salary. We also like the Labour Commission to respond to this matter so that we can know whether the government gazette was implemented on July 2017 is true or false.
Rubicon Security Manager Michael Bingham received the petition on behalf of the company owner.
I'm receiving your letter and I will give it to the two directors and then they can speak to you further.
The workers also handed over a petition to the Labour Office.
The revised National Policy on Human-Wildlife Conflict Management was launched in Windhoek. In terms of the new policy, people setting up projects in areas with big wildlife numbers without environmental clearance certificates will not be compensated for any damage caused to them.
We are not going to compensate people who put up infrastructure or even listen to them. If they have not, those activities are listed activities and have not been cleared, we are not going to listen to anybody.
Over the past few years, the issue of human-wildlife conflict has been on the increase, which forced farmers and communities to raise this serious concern. This then made the Ministry of Environment and Tourism to revise the current National Human-Wildlife Conflict Policy. In excluding household farms, Minister Shifeta said often people violate environmental laws by putting up projects without clearance by the Environmental Commissioner. He hopes that the Environmental Management Act will help avoid such conflict. Competitions such as water and space for grazing, as well as drought, are some of the driving factors that lead to human-wildlife conflict. Shifeta stressed the necessary and urgency for a mechanism that would allow rural communities and farmers to better manage and benefit from wildlife and other resources.
The Ministry of Environment and Tourism in particular will always put the measures in place to manage the conflict in a way that recognizes the rights and development needs of local communities, recognize the right of those local communities, and also recognize the need to promote biodiversity conservation.
The launched policy sets out 12 strategic areas, which include research and monitoring, land planning, and the removal of problem-causing animals. It also introduces the establishment of a human-wildlife conflict insurance scheme to directly offset the losses of communities and individual farmers. The policy will be implemented for a period of 10 years. Jilana Fuka, NBC News, Windhoek.
An avenue located in the heart of the Mauritanian capital, Nouakchott, has been named after South Africa's former president, Nelson Mandela. The unveiling of the avenue happened on the sidelines of the 31st African Union Summit in the Mauritanian capital.
18 marks the year that late former President Nelson Mandela would have turned 100 years old. A number of activities to commemorate the centenary are being held all over South Africa. At the unveiling of this Mandela Avenue in Mauritania, President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed gratitude that it's not only South Africans who are honoring the memory and life of Mandela.
We are deeply touched and humbled that there are many people across the continent of Africa and the world who are remembering Nelson Mandela and the work of his life. We remember Nelson Mandela not only because he was an iconic leader, but we remember him because he was a Pan-Africanist. Nelson Mandela was very much an African person in his own identity and an African leader.
The unveiling of the avenue was presided over by the Mauritian head of state, Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz, and attended by Rwandan President Paul Kagame. Kagame is the current chairperson of the African Union.
To have the people of Mauritania honoring him in this manner, and also the chairperson of the African Union also being here to honor him, for us as South Africans is deeply humbling. For us, it confirms very much that we as South Africans are completely a part of Africa, and we stand for the values and the ideals that Africa as a continent stands for.
Ramaphosa says this year is also an opportune time to rekindle a common desire to do good and to help the less fortunate in practical ways, motivated by the legacy Mandela left for future generations.
Kenya Rugby Union has been a house full of wrangles for the last few weeks. Cracks began emerging when Kenya Sevens players stripped off a sponsor's logo at the Paris Sevens in June.
Act led to the sacking of Sevens head coach Innocent Simiyu immediately following the withdrawal of sponsors. The union came under fire from rugby fans in the country, with fans backing Simiyu, who had led Kenya to reach and surpass 100 points in the World Sevens circuit for the first time. Players then backed their coach with threats of not taking part in the Rugby World Cup that starts on July the 20th in San Francisco. However, meetings between all parties involved in recent days has seen some of the issues resolved, and the Sevens team hit training camp.
There was a misunderstanding between the union and the coach. The coach should realize that he is an employee of the union, and as an employer, we have certain responsibilities. As you are my employee, you have certain obligations as well. So it's a give and take. It's regrettable that that happened, because you know that Simiyu has been and will go down in history as one of the best coaches we've had. Even though people were skeptical about his performance, he has delivered the 100+ points, which not even Mike Friday was able to deliver.
Also brings us to the close of the midweek edition of the 7 a.m. news on NBC. I'm Leonard Vidbian. Thank you for watching.
Leonard, for bringing us the news at 7. Of course, just highlighting on some of the stories there.
Absolutely. First up this hour, we'll be talking about the importance of signing a contract with a lawyer. That's with Apollos Shimakeleni.
Now, the managing director of Salt Essentials, that's Peter Muller, as well as Vanessa Maresh, who is the business development manager, will be in studio as well to talk about the 2018 Microsoft Country Partner of the Year award that Namibia won.
Right, that's a very exciting. And moving right along, Francois Brandt, the FLI Secretariat Manager, will be joining us with a recap on how the Namibian Startup Festival went.
Also, we'll be discussing fashion with fashion designer and entrepreneur, that's Nicolene Damage. She'll be here to share some tips on how entrepreneurs can be part of the fashion industry. And I think it's one of the industries that are fast growing in Namibia.
Absolutely. I see you like your suits and ties. Is it damage or domage? You know how fashionistas are.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. And then moving right along, a Pioneers Park Pharmacy Namibian, actually in Namibia, Namibian Closed Squash Championships. There we go, that's the correct word. Took place on Sunday, and joining us this morning on the other end of the line to talk about her victory will be Audrey Lambert.
Big ups to her. And for sports, that will be our sports interview for this morning, of course. So many thanks for staying tuned. We bring you the second hour of the program. To stay with us.
Salt Essential IT has won the 2018 Microsoft Country Partner of the Year Award in Namibia. And to share more details is Vanessa Mersch, who's the Business Development Partner, as well as Peter Miller, who's the Managing Director. Vanessa, have I gotten your surname correct?
No, Maresh.
It's Maresh.
Yes.
All right, there we go. Good morning, guys, and welcome.
Morning.
Morning. Let's start off with you, Vanessa. What are the key objectives and aims of Salt Essentials?
Well, we're in the business of making businesses work. So we provide services with the aim of enabling customers to deliver on their services or deliver services and products to their customers. So it's all around enabling businesses. Yes, and that's basically what we do, is to empower the employee to work faster, better, from anywhere, and obviously at half the cost.
Yeah, at any time, more effective. I wish I could do that, work from home, hey? Peter, talk to us. Namibia has 700,000 internet users. I can't believe
it's
that.
It's actually over 700.
It's over, hey? All right. And Salt is currently moving 5% of them to the cloud. What does the cloud mean for the layman on the street?
Okay, we started almost 20 years ago with the concept of a data center, which is a place full of computers, which we've built up to be a very sophisticated show over the last 20 years. And this bank of computers is shared by many businesses and customers. This is where Vanessa says we enable people's business. So we were actually doing cloud computing then already, and the word became fashionable, what, 10 years ago or so. And it's a place where you can rent equipment, you can rent servers. So businesses do not have to invest in their own infrastructure. They can rent servers and computers from the cloud.
Okay, someone might be watching now and saying, Peter, you're saying, is it easier or more affordable for businesses to rent the equipment, the servers, or to own the servers?
It's becoming increasingly economically sensible to rent servers from the cloud.
Okay. Right.
I'd just like to add the international cloud is coming in a big way as competition. So there's cloud everywhere these days. And us winning the Microsoft Prize is us actually taking Namibians into the Microsoft Cloud, which is an instance in Europe somewhere. We're not quite sure where.
There are about 100 data centers, Microsoft data centers. So we've got, in Windhoek, we've got our own one, and then we have point of presence in another 2. But then, like Peter says, we also work with Microsoft too, and we're one of the only direct cloud partners of Microsoft. So we can give you services from the Microsoft Cloud, which is obviously much bigger in scale. So it's much cheaper than doing it locally, and obviously much more secure than anyone could do it here.
Absolutely. Vanessa, talk to us about the competition. What was it about? What were the categories? How did we end up winning?
It was a huge thing. I think we've been working for 2 years towards this, so we are absolutely ecstatic. It's all about proving to Microsoft that you have a solution which involves Microsoft Cloud services, and that this solution is actually saving people money, it's making their data more secure, and you have to prove it. So you have to get your customers to stand up and say, hey, yes, they definitely did this. They saved us 50% on our monthly ICT bill. Our data is more secure. It's much easier to operate. And our customers are actually thriving. And in this very difficult economic climate, you know, we could prove that our customers are doing very, very well. So it was a lot of hard work that went into that. It's not only that, you have to actually be, it's all a level playing field to Microsoft. So if you're little Namibia or if you're France, the criteria are the same. You need to have the same amount of qualified, experienced technicians. You need to have the same sales volumes. So that 5% is significant, because if you compare it to, imagine moving 5% of Germany's cloud in, you know, in 2 years, it's amazing. So we're very, very proud. We're doing a very good job, and we are taking more and more people to the cloud and every day.
Right. Peter, perhaps you can talk to us about what this award means, not just for the company, because we've heard that now from Vanessa, but for our country. Does it sort of put Namibia on the map, would you say? She's saying yes.
Very much so, okay. The prize is something which happens in many countries. And Country Partner of the Year is one all over the place, but there's always only one in a country, and this puts us into a club which is unique.
Right.
So only, for example, there are only 5 countries in Africa that have won this award, and we're one of them.
Okay, that makes me proud. You see, just as simple as that, Peter. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming in. Any final remarks? Because when it comes to technology and information communication technology specifically, Namibia is sort of lagging behind somewhat. What message would you have to say? I mean, you having this company, are young people really taking up the subjects at university level or tertiary level to sort of join this particular market?
Well, I'd like to say that,
answer that one.
I'd like to say that our youngsters are getting into it very enthusiastically. We are a company full of youngsters. I'm the old guy around, okay, but there's a lot of hope, and I'm very confident that we'll get there. I don't think Namibia is lagging behind too much. I think we're actually we're on the forefront of IT compared to many African countries. And I would like to think that SALT is on the forefront of the forefront.
Of course, of course. Guys, thank you so much for coming in, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, SALT representatives there. That was the Managing Director, Peter Müller, as well as Vanessa Maresh, who is the Development Business Partner Manager. There we go, at SALT Essential IT. They've won the 2018 Microsoft Country Partner of the Year Award for Namibia. Do stay tuned.
Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka.
First, there were hundreds. Then the numbers dwindled down to 30. And now there's only the cream of the crop, our top 12 contestants. Vote for your favorite contestant and tune in as we crown our very own Miss Namibia 2018 on the 7th of July 2018 at the Vinto Country Club and Resort and Casino. Live on NBC One.
Many thanks for staying with us. Now, a contract is a written or spoken agreement, especially one concerning employment, sales, or tenancy that is intended to be enforceable by law. Now, joining us this morning to talk about the importance of signing a contract is a lawyer, that is Apollos Shimakeleni, and he's here to unpack that for us. Apollos, a very good morning to you. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
In this day and age, where things are ever moving, how important are our contracts?
Contracts are very important in the sense that a contract lays down the terms between the parties, and also a contract is important because in cases of a dispute, both parties will know when the other party.
Sorry, Apollos, we're experiencing an issue with your microphone. We'll be back soon, and we'll be engaging Apollos on the issue of contracts. So stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Before that break, we were in discussion with Apollos Shimakeleni about the importance of contracts. Apollos, once again, very good morning to you.
Morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Right. In this, day and age, how important are contracts, and, what stipulates, what necessitates a contract?
The importance of a contract is that contracts are there to lay down the terms between the parties, and in case of disputes, they are there for legal certainty. And contracts are very important.
Yeah. What would you say are the key elements, of a binding contract?
The key elements are, firstly, there should be an offer from one of the parties to the other, and on the other end, there must be acceptance from that party. Another element is the fact that the parties should be competent. In other words, it should not be a minor, it should not be a drunk person. And another element is that the contract needs to be lawful. It should not be something that is against the law.
In your, experience, have people, sort of grasped the importance of contracts?
Some people do understand what contracts are there for. Some people don't, because most people actually sign contracts without reading them. So some do, some don't.
Yeah. And of course, how dangerous is that thing, the fine print, not reading the fine print of a contract?
The danger of it is the fact that you're actually binding yourself to something you don't understand. And in most instances, you actually realize that people just think the contract is on one aspect, despite the fact that this contract can actually be 10 pages. So in the end, when something is being enforced on or being applied on them, they won't be happy about it. But then they sign the contract, and it's actually binding on them.
Yeah. Are verbal or spoken agreements, still considered a contract? Is it valid?
Yes, indeed. Oral agreements are contracts for all intents and purposes. The problem with oral agreements is the fact that they are difficult to prove. In other words, if the other party disputes the oral agreement, you would struggle proving it.
Yeah. Of course, when withdrawing from, a contract, from a bind contract, what liabilities are we looking at here?
Well, this depends on the specific contract. I mean, you would find that, for example, lease agreements, they usually have a termination clause. Yeah. But some contracts are fixed term, and unfortunately, you might not be able to get out of some contracts without incurring liability.
What happens in the case that somebody signs a contract that they didn't read or that don't fully understand? You know, does that affect the enforceability of the agreement?
Well, I mean, if you sign a contract, because remember when you sign, what you're actually saying is that you read and you understood what you're saying. So you can be bound to a contract that you did not understand, but in instances where you are misled, you might try to get yourself out of it, but then that will be difficult to prove because the other party will say, listen, this is your signature, you read and understood the contract. So it's always important to read what you're signing.
But one thing I've realized about contracts is the use of language. It's not the easiest to understand, very complicated terms. Why is that the case?
Yeah, well, that is actually true, especially with purchase of goods agreements. That is the case because, I mean, retailers and most of the shops out there, they try to cover themselves as much as they can. So in other words, it's actually not, these contracts are not long necessarily to discourage you from reading it, but it's the other party is just making sure they cover themselves from all angles.
Yeah. What would you advise to, you know, the ordinary citizen out there who doesn't fully grasp, you know, contracts, so to say? What should they do?
I would advise that it's always important to enter into an agreement. And I mean, if you can afford the lawyer, you can go to a lawyer to draft you up a contract, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a contract needs to be drafted by a lawyer for it to be binding. So even if you have a handwritten note and both parties sign, as long as it's clear what the terms are, when the payment is due and all that, I mean, that is a binding contract.
And that is enforceable by law?
It is enforceable by law.
Apollos, many thanks for joining us this morning and for sharing your insight here on the program.
Thank you very much.
That was lawyer Apollos Shimakeleni speaking to us this morning about the importance of contracts and, of course, what you need to know about a contract before binding yourself to it. So please, let's be careful and, of course, make sure that we understand what we are agreeing to. We return and we discuss fashion matters. So stay with us.
Well, welcome back. And joining us this time around is Nicolene Damage, who's a fashion designer as well as entrepreneur, to talk to us about being proactive within the business sector, this particular sector of the business, as well as give us some tips. Well, Nicolene, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I was convinced your second name was Damage because, you know, you fashionistas.
Yeah, I know.
It's just Damage. Eh? Where does the name come from?
It was basically just the saying that you have to dress to impress, and then I decided, okay, dress to damage. not to impress.
All right. You're
Leave
a
an
designer.
impact.
Make an impact, eh? You're a designer, you're an entrepreneur. What's one of the first steps to take when you want to get your business off the ground?
Okay, you need to have your equipment right. And the next step, you have to register for a CC.
Okay.
And then you get yourself a place, and then you get started, build the clientele, basically.
All right. Getting a place is quite pricey these days. One can start from home. I mean, in your industry especially, correct?
Yeah, but I prefer not starting from home because, you know, we are humans, we are unreliable. You can end up sleeping till 1 and then...
The work doesn't get done.
Especially in the beginning.
Okay.
Until you get the hang of it, then you can work from home and then you're already used to the routine of waking up early and waking up that day and not deciding to just remain in bed.
That's a good tip. From the time of Charles Frederick Worth, who was the first designer to have his or her label sewed onto garments in the 19th century? He was. The fashion industry has evolved. How do you keep up with the ever-changing fashion trends? It's so fast. You've got different trendsetters, and in most cases, we get them from abroad. So how do you keep up?
I think with the technological advances that we have, all you basically need is just your phone. Because to keep up with the trends, we don't get to buy magazines anymore because we have the internet, where you keep up with the international designers and see what they're up to. And then that's how you keep up with the trends.
All right. Who's your primary sort of client? Who do you design for? And what events do you design for?
Okay, I design for Miss Namibia. Miss Namibia, let's say the Namas, weddings, farewells, confirmations, and all the... My clientele is basically everyone. From young to old.
So how do you plan ahead? Because designing for pageants such as Miss Namibia, which is coming up soon, by the way, it must be a lot of work. How do you plan ahead?
Like being in this industry for so long, I've learned that there's always a pattern. You know that in the beginning of the year you start planning for weddings, and during this time of the year it's Miss Namibia, there's Durban July, there's weddings. So you need to prioritize, because like you need to tell yourself, okay, during this time of the year I'm just focusing on my weddings, and then I jump over to my farewells and stuff like that.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. And what's the importance of being proactive in business?
You need to be hands-on. Yeah. You definitely need to be hands-on. You have to work extra harder. You need to work extra harder. You have to be, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you are the only one that can make sure that your work is done. So you need to be active with your people, with your assistants that are working for you, just to make sure that everything is running smoothly, and you need to communicate with your clients as well.
Absolutely. Nicolene, talk to us. What are some of the ethical principles that guide the fashion industry, especially here at home?
You need to be, what can I say? You have to, okay, for me, I personally feel that you need to treat everyone equally. You just humble yourself and be nice to your clients, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that you need to work with every single day of your life. Because word of mouth is also another thing. If they talk bad about you, others, the rest will automatically just think that you are that type of person that the one client talked about.
All right, perception matters. All right, finally, for those who would like to enter this industry or start, or maybe are still at school studying in to become a fashion designer, what some of the tips you can share with them, or some advice?
They have to, okay, first get your training. That's very important, because without the training, you won't be able to do anything. Just work hard. For me, it's just hard work and consistency, basically. You need to make sure that your clients are happy at all times. Okay, we are all humans. We make mistakes, but then you have to learn from your mistakes. at all times as well. Every year must be a learning curve. Every mistake you make must guide you to do the right thing the next time.
Do you wear your own clothes?
I do, yes.
Are you wearing one of them now?
No, no.
Okay, cool. I'm just inquisitive. All right, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
There you have it, Nicolene Damage. She's a fashion designer, just giving us tips and tricks and details as to how to maneuver the fashion industry here in Namibia, the guidelines you need to follow, and being disciplined. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with more.
We want to preserve a legacy, the things which she has started, the school which she has started, some of the organizations like the Girl Child, the Children's Movement, the Women's Organization. Participatory democracy was one of her policies. She taught children to participate in national issues, in debates, involving people, kids, in decision making, and making the individual aware that they've got a role to play, not to be passive, but to be active.
Oh, she was more than a mother to me. Like she was a role model and someone I looked up to. There's a learner and there's one of her mentees. Like she's like a loss to me. It's really painful because like I saw her as my own biological mother, because she did not discriminate like whether you're a foreigner, how old you are. Like she treated everyone equal. She was always there for you, like no matter what you're going through. Like she was understanding. If you had a problem at home, she'll always try her best to assist you in everything within her capacity.
We are not feeling good for losing our principal. She's a good teacher and she did a lot to everyone. So she's very kind to everyone. She accepts all the foreigners and everyone at this school.
It's a sad story to hear that we lost our principal, but at the same time, we want to tell the family that we would like to see you strong.
God is with her, and you know, God took her for a reason. You know, God needs somebody good on his side, so that's why he took them.
Thank you for what you have done. Thank you for her to take the family, the people that from abroad, and she's accepting them just because they don't have enough education there. So we hope they will be strong. They will build up more like classes so they can come take over the school, and then it will continue.
I just want to wish the family to be strong and not to lose hope. I would like to say, rest in peace, my lovely mother.
She's a mother to us and a principal. She's a lot to us. I would like to say, rest in peace. We are also coming, we'll find you. She's our mother, and to the family, I would like to say, not much to say, but may God be with you.
It's a time of grief. It's a terrible loss, but we thank God for her life. We want to celebrate her life. She has been a lively person. Even in her old age, she continued coming to work. She continued doing everything in her power. She was even building a building which is at the back there, which is not complete. She did not give up on herself. She continued to do it. She never said, no, I'm now too old, I'll stop the building. And we want to say to her family, we thank you for lending us this personality.
Thank you for staying with us. The Pioneers Park Pharmacy Namibian Closed Squash Championship took place on Sunday. And joining us this morning on the other end of the line to talk about her victory is Audrey Lambert. Audrey, a very good morning to you and many thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Morning.
Congratulations. How do you feel this morning?
I'm feeling great. A bit cold.
Oh, yeah, we're all bracing the cold, hey?
Yes, yes.
Tell me, how was the overall competition over the weekend?
Yes, we did have the Namibian Squash Championships over the weekend. It was quite busy with 72 players participated, of which 16 were ladies, and 160 games were played. So it was quite busy.
72. And you came out on top?
Yes, from the ladies, yes.
From the ladies.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. Just tell us, of course, in terms of how you prepared yourself for this competition, speak to us about your routine there.
Yes, we usually exercise, I usually exercise 4 to 5 times a week, but squash is very mentally as well, not just physically. So the moment I've entered this competition, I said this is one competition I would really like to win. So yes, it all worked well out.
Squash is such an intense sport, and I only learned this the other day.
Yes, yes, very intense, yes.
So tell us, what were some of the challenges perhaps that you faced during the match, and of course, which was your most difficult opponent, would you say?
I would say I'm struggling a bit with my fitness. I had an Achilles injury last year, and my opponent took the first game. So yes, I had to regroup from the first game, and made a few changes to the game, yes, and yeah.
Yeah. Audrey, how long have you been playing squash?
More than 15 years.
13?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time. How old are you now?
42.
All right. So where to from here? What's next on your calendar?
We at the end of July, we're going to have the Nashua Open. So yes, that's the next tournament, also at Wanderers.
At Wanderers. When is this happening?
29th of July.
29th of July.
That's right.
Audrey, many thanks for joining us this morning. Any final remarks from you?
Yes, I would just like to say again thank you to Pioneers Park Pharmacy for sponsoring the tournament. And if anyone is interested in trying out squash, we have social Saturdays on every Saturday from 11 to 1, so they are more than welcome.
Social Saturdays?
That's right, yes.
Where is this happening?
At Wanderers Squash Club.
At Wanderers as well. And there seems to be a growing interest in the sport, yes?
Yes, very much. I think from when I started and where it's now, it's grown a lot.
Fantastic. Audrey, congratulations once again and many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's Audrey Lambert. She won the Pioneers Park Pharmacy Namibian Closed Squash Championship over the weekend. Of course, coming out on top against 16 women out of 72, that is, competitors in the competition. And she performed the best. To stay with us, we return right after this.
first, there were hundreds. Then the numbers dwindled down to 30. And now there's only the cream of the crop, our top 12 contestants. Vote for your favorite contestant and tune in as we crown our very own Miss Namibia 2018 on the 7th of July 2018 at the Vinto Country Club and Resort and Casino. Live on NBC One.
Every morning one comes in.
One comes upside down.
And one comes rolling in. The usual suspects, like traffic.
Quirky news and who's who in the zoo.
Namibian history, news and amazing facts. Then comes the weather.
And sometimes we have stormy conditions.
Yeah. But the sweet sound calms the atmosphere. And that's when things come together.
And you get the perfect cup
of Java. Oops.
They're headed this way.
This is not fair. This is not fair.
Yeah, well, that's the easy part.
He's Bigfoot.
No, Jill, no. You can't go outside, and that's final.
You can take the Bigfoot out of the wild, but you can't take the wild out of the Bigfoot.
He's got to be around here somewhere. I need you guys to help us catch him.
Now you know the big secret of Hidden Pines. Resnick, Howard, why is the park ranger moving into this street?
We want to give people the information so they can be advocates for themselves.
This is a great gift.
I couldn't hear you. First thing you need to do is get educated. Number one, make sure you know what's going in your body. In Ask Dr. Nanny, we cover topics from A through Z. Take East and take the West. Take the best of both those cultures and come up with solutions.
You can gradually guide your brain to change for the better over time.
We're not dealing with the bald-faced bigotry of previous generations.
Well, that brings us to the end of this morning's edition of Good Morning Namibia. Very insightful as always, and of course always a pleasure being in the company of that is our viewers.
Yeah, we've had a fantastic show, but before we say goodbye, just on a more earnest note, we've got an announcement.
Of course, we have the funeral and memorial arrangements for the late, that is Ottilie Abrahams. Now, a church memorial service will be held at the Martin Luther Congregation, that is at the MU Greef Street, Kommersdal, on Wednesday, which is today, the 4th of July, at 1900 hours, 7 p.m. this evening. It will be followed by a memorial service to honor her contributions to the social fabric of the Namibian community, and this will be held at the Jan Moore Secondary School, that is in Aries Street, that is on Friday, the 6th of July, 2018, at 2 p.m. And of course, it will also be followed by the funeral service, which will be held at the Gateway Center on the corner of Florence Nightingale and Hans Dietrich Genster Street on Sunday, the 8th of July at 10 a.m. So once again, there will be a memorial service today at the MU Greef Street in Kommersdal, of course, at the Martin Luther Congregation today at 1900 hours, which will be followed by another memorial service, which will be held on Friday, the 6th of July at 2 p.m. That is at the Jan Moore Secondary School. And lastly, the funeral will be taking place on Sunday at the Gateway Center, which is on the corner of Florence Nightingale and Hans Dietrich Genster Street. That is on Sunday, the 8th of July at 10 a.m., just honoring who the person was as Ottilie Abrahams.
Absolutely. So go and make that final, say that final goodbye, have that final goodbye. But from us as well as our crew, it's goodbye.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
And I know you believe, and I know you had dreams, and I'm sorry to call this time to see that I am where I am because of your truth, and I miss you, yeah, I miss you. Mama, forget the times you've cried. Forgive me for not making right all the storms I may have caused, and I've been wrong. Dry your eyes, dry your eyes, 'cause I know you believe, and I know you have dreams, and I'm sorry it took all this time to see, but I am where I am because of your truth, and I miss you, I miss you.
This is NBC One. It's ours.
Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka. Waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka moo moo, waka waka.
First, there were hundreds. Then the numbers dwindled down to 30. And now there's only the cream of the crop, our top 12 contestants. Vote for your favorite contestant and tune in as we crown our very own Miss Namibia 2018 on the 7th of July 2018 at the Vinto Country Club and Resort and Casino. Live on NBC One.
September 1978. A Boeing 727 is headed for the ground.
Easy, baby, easy. Mom, I love you.
San Diego becomes the site of the worst aviation disaster in U.S. history.
And my hair stood up on the back of my head when I learned that this crash had occurred.
Oh my word, the accident scene was horrendous. How am I going to put this puzzle together? It was a real big concern of mine.
Evidence leads investigators to a remarkable conclusion.
Oh yeah, before we turned downwind, I saw about one.
A horrendous accident may have been caused.
Oh yeah, before we turned downwind, I saw him about 1 o'clock.
By a single misheard syllable. Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 182 is on an early morning run down the coast of California, from Sacramento to San Diego. First Officer Bob Fox is at the controls.
Approach PSA 182 coming on a 9.5, descending to 7,000. Airport is in sight.
A 9-year veteran with PSA, he's on track to becoming a captain. Captain Jim McFerrin has been with the airline for 17 years. Known as a born pilot, he is highly regarded by his colleagues. This is the second flight of the day for both men.
PSA 182.
Cleared visual approach, runway 27.
Thank you, cleared visual approach 27.
Among the 128 passengers, there are 30 Pacific Southwest employees. Many are heading back to the company's home base in San Diego.
PSA was an excellent airline. They had a super maintenance record, super safety record. They were recognized in the industry as, wow, these guys are good.
Pilots are cautious when arriving at San Diego. Lindbergh Field is the busiest single runway airport in North America.
San Diego Lindbergh Airport is a challenging place to fly into because of its proximity to downtown and also some of the obstructions around it.
There's a very drastic terrain drop. Pilots do it all the time, and some of them don't like to talk about it, but it's a little scary. There was always concern that, wow, someday, you know, there could be a major crash.
Several other airports nearby are abuzz with commercial, military, and private planes.
The airspace around San Diego International is quite busy because of the 600 flights a day in and out. So there are planes taking off and landing constantly.
Flight 182 will have to thread its way through all this traffic while passing over the city, preparing to land on runway 27. Martin Wayne is at the engineer's console. As they approach the airport, he contacts the company's head office.
We're out of Los Angeles, San Diego at 0905.
PSA 182, roger.
A little late, but thank you. I just called my off report. The guy started laughing.
Make it up by reporting our next takeoff now. Very nice.
Even though they were fun and laid back, they were still highly professional. The crews were just personable. You felt like they wanted you to be on their airplanes. It was great. Catch our smile was their motto. It was an experience. It was fun.
Flight 182's approach to Lindbergh Field is being handled by an approach controller at a facility 15 kilometers north of the airport.
The approach control facility is quite busy, and that's stressful because you're handling so many different airplanes in the same airspace.
When the controller spots a Cessna flying ahead of Flight 182, he makes sure that they can see it.
PSA 182, traffic's at 12 o'clock.
3 miles out, 1,700.
Got it. Traffic in sight.
They were issued traffic. They acknowledged sight of the traffic.
Okay, sir. Maintain visual separation. Contact Lindbergh Tower.
133.3. Have a nice day.
Okay. Visual separation means that the pilot has another aircraft in sight and acknowledges it.
Got it. Once the visual approach is accepted by the pilot, he's then responsible for maintaining separation from that traffic. Somewhat like two boats passing, it's the responsibility of the overtaking boat to maintain separation visually.
As it approaches the airport, Flight 182 banks left, so that it's flying parallel to the runway, ready to turn and land when given permission.
I would characterize this as wonderfully routine. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary with this flight.
With the plane now less than 8 kilometers from the runway, a controller in the airport's tower takes over to guide the flight in for landing.
Lindbergh, PSA 182, downwind.
182, roger.
Within the airport traffic area, which is that 5-mile radius, the airplanes coming into the airport to land and take off are controlled by that controller.
The tower controller is juggling several planes in addition to the PSA 727.
PSA 182, traffic 12 o'clock, 1 mile, a Cessna.
Because if there's only one runway at Lindbergh, it requires some air traffic control spacing because of the difference in the speeds of the aircraft.
PSA 182, clear to land.
182 is clear to land.
The jets have quite a significantly faster approach speed than the Cessna, so you have to give them more spacing.
It's now 9 a.m. Many passengers on Flight 182 are planning to put in a full day's work in San Diego.
Gear down.
Minutes from landing, pilot Bob Fox spots a distant plane.
There's one underneath. I was looking at that inbound over there. Easy, baby, easy, baby.
A professional photographer happens to spot Flight 182 in flames.
Okay, what do we got here? It's bad. We're hit, man, we're hit. Doc.
We're going down. This is PSA.
Okay. We'll call the equipment for you.
The approach controller's radar reveals that the 727 has collided with the Cessna.
Jesus Christ. It's an aluminum shower.
To have two aircraft under your control collide is the worst nightmare, I think, for any controller. I don't think anything else could be that bad.
This is it, baby. Break the top. Bob, I love you.
All of a sudden, just went right in. Just a burst of flames. It was just incredible. Can't do anything about it. Come on, let's go.
And my hair stood up on the back of my head when I learned that this crash had occurred. This huge mushroom cloud of smoke and fire was seen by thousands of people.
Two planes have collided and fallen from the sky over San Diego. The city is in shock. But the full scope of the tragedy is only beginning to emerge.
Hundreds of people watched in horror as the two planes collided and crashed into a quiet San Diego residential neighborhood.
This is the biggest disaster that's ever happened in San Diego County.
One witness reported seeing falling bodies hit a car.
Two bodies were